I hit start, and then the moment I hit start, my mother messaged me, and it's like, oh, hi, Mom. Let me pause there just a second. So this is the episode, Season 1, Episode 12? Call of the Cutie, which is the first episode in which we introduced to Sweetie Belle as well as Scootaloo. It's an episode that they first really just start discussing cutie marks and the fact that Apple Bloom does not have a cutie mark, and she runs around trying to get a cutie mark, which is going to kind of inform her character arc for the next, 7 trillion years. A slight exaggeration. Slight. So, but this is an unusual episode to really talk about. Oh yeah, gotta have more toys. Very important. I mean, this is a show about making money, and that's all that matters is money, death to everything. Sorry. Positivity. So, let's just get the big one out of the way first, shall we? So, puberty. Obviously, there are other impressions and specifics of cutie marks and how they fit within the world building of the setting, which we'll actually discuss briefly here and more in depth later. But no, it's puberty. This is puberty. It was actually we know this because it was actually designed as an analogy for puberty. However, it will be fleshed out considerably more in the future, which is why I say we'll kind of talk about that. I have to admit, I'm kind of okay with the approach to this. In fact, this is one of the earlier things. As weird as this may sound, this is one of the earlier things about... How do I phrase this? About this show that actually came to my attention. The idea that it's a show about trying to sell you toys, but also contained the messages along the lines of, it's okay to be different, and eventually you'll grow into whoever you're going to be. Please buy our toys. It's one of the first things I learned about this show. This is years ago at this point. I also have to imagine... Well, I mean, there's no actual puberty, Baron. It's when you get your cutie mark. That is puberty right there. That's it in a nutshell. Although I do have to admit, it's actually interesting to think about. I decided to look this up. The woman who plays Apple Bloom, whose name I've already forgotten, was actually 15 when this episode went live. Which makes me feel old. Anyhow. So she talks about it, blah, blah, blah. Quick note, very quickly. I always love it when the animators do little tiny things in the background. Did you notice that I had to look this up, but it's the formula for magnetic permeability is on the chalkboard in the background? Because, I mean, that sounds appropriate for their given age range, right? That sounds like a suitable thing for them to discuss. Apparently this is a common thing, which is how I ended up finding it. I found a site that just kind of lists all of the stuff that they put on the background. And apparently they do a lot of fairly high-end formulas and calculations on various things, just for the heck of it. This is muted, right? Yep, okay, good. Sorry, I want to check something. Because I have been informed of something just a bit ago. There it is. Sorry. I want to pull something up really quick here. Really quick. There it is. Boom. Okay, we're just going to pause there. All right, so... Nature of cutie marks. When they discover something that makes them special and different from every other pony. It doesn't happen overnight, and no amount of wishing, hoping, or begging will make it appear before its time. Now, what's funny is that dialogue is actually being said under the main events of the episode. That's the teacher, Cheerilee, talking about that, underneath the main event of the episode, which is the note passing thing. I'm just actually amused by that, because that is pretty much not only their, the episode, but their entire story arc in a nutshell right there. Just bam. This is how this works. But what I also have to find amusing about that is they talk about how everyone discovers something that makes them special and different from everyone else. Now, again, we will be talking a lot about the nature of cutie marks going forward because it's an oft-discussed topic. Let me just go ahead and share my headcanon on the matter really quick. I've always assumed that a cutie mark is basically just a manifestation of who you are. To put that into simplistic terminology, this sounds like an irrelevant distinction, but from a philosophical perspective, it matters if it changes who you are or if it expresses who you are. It's either determining you or it's showcasing you. Do you see the difference? And this is something that actually is very often debated in real life philosophy. The idea of nurture versus nature is probably the most obvious real life parallel to this. How much of you is you? How much of you can be changed? To what extent can it be changed? And so forth and so on. It's a very oft debated topic, and there's no clear answer to it. It's just something that we debate to this very day. So, I need to sneeze. Excuse me. Now, that being said, it's always been my opinion that a cutie mark is an expression of who and what you are, and specifically your slot within the pattern. I've talked before about the idea of harmony being a more or less literal mathematical pattern that is maintained throughout the setting, or at least within the region. You know, the magical harmonic resonance thing, right? Friendship literally being magic, blah, 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 blah. Now, I bring that up, though, because we know that that's also not immutable. There are at least two other examples I can think of off the top of my head where cutie marks are altered, where cutie marks are altered or changed, and it obviously has an impact on the person, but the impact is universally unnatural. Like, it shows that it's a bad thing for the most part. It's also worth noting, however, that the nature of those changes is not linear. I don't want to spoil future stuff, but let's just say that when Starlight Glimmer does stuff, and her shtick is extremely powerful magic, and cutie marks in particular, she manages to swap things in a way that doesn't actually change the core nature of the person. Whereas when Twilight accidentally alters the cutie marks of the people, she, as she's doing so, similarly alters the core nature of the people in a way that doesn't fit, and thus just makes everything go wrong. So, this is something that we will debate more in the future. I just wanted to bring it up briefly now, since this is the first time they really start discussing the nature of cutie marks and how they work. Now, one thing I want to mention, though, it actually is really cool that Cheerilee has smiling flowers as her cutie mark. And now, that sounds like a strange thing to comment on, but you know me, I like to overthink things because it's my job. Thank you very much for paying my bills. And that means you don't need, like, a literal symbol of what you do, and the thing that is your specific role in the universe does not actually have to be something simplistic. Both of those are demonstrated by that simple fact. Because being a teacher is actually not a simplistic concept. It is actually a complex concept. And that's awesome. And she even explains it. I nurture smiles and I help children bloom. She even explains how her cutie mark specifically relates to her job. She bothers to do that. So it doesn't have to be a literal representation as well. I just like both of those points, and I wanted to comment on those very briefly here. A cutie mark for a jack of all trades. I don't know, honestly. Yeah, meanwhile, there's also Diamond Tiara, whose cutie mark is a diamond tiara, and Silver Spoon, whose cutie mark is a silver spoon. That could be it, Weouts. Now, Imperial Star Destroyer there says, do free will and choice have no place in the Ponyverse? Actually, I think it's the exact opposite. I think free will is what determines the harmonic resonance. See, this is going to sound strange, but again, this is why I brought up that original point. Does a cutie mark determine who you are, or does a cutie mark represent who you are? Now, that is the key distinction. Does fate rule your existence, or do you choose your place in society? And the impetus for this is external or internal. Now, I tend to be a very big proponent of freedom of will in general, and the idea of the fact that the individual can choose. I am really big on choice. But It is worth noting that both are a debatable representation of what's going on here. That's actually not a bad comparison, Shadow. The idea that cutie marks are similar to sorting hats, just on a far larger scale and far more impacting on who and what you are. Now, that is, of course, my take on that. And again, we will see quite a few episodes discussing the cutie mark concept and the nature of how it reacts to that and blah, blah, blah. This very episode also brings up a caveat, which I'm going to wait on until we get there, because that's a later thing. But it is a common topic in all of human fiction as well as real life. Like I said, this is an oft-debated topic. Because some people really do think fate is a thing, or divine will. And some people think that choice is a thing. And some people think both is a thing. So, I mean, it's life, it's complex. Which, if I might be so bold, I do think that the original intent was that for things to be complex is kind of the nature of things. And I want to come back to that. So don't let me forget the complex thing, okay? Just let me come back around to that, all right? Cool. So, you ever have note-passing trolls back in school? Because I do. I did. I suppose I should say past tense. I hated note-passing trolls. Used to drive me nuts. Really? None of you ever had that problem? Wow. I used to have that problem all the time. Granted, my early years in school were in California, and California sucks, but at least the schooling in California sucked. I should use past tense as well. But it's when someone tries to get you in trouble by getting you caught passing a note for them. That's what a note passing troll is. I used to have that all the damn time, and I always felt like a jerk when I would say no. And the best part is if they keep persisting and you say no too forcefully, that will also get you noticed by the teacher, which will also get you in trouble. Could someone go stab Shadow for being an idiot really quick? Just super quick stabbing. Anyway, so we find out that she has a cute quinceañera. I'm actually a little amused they call it a cute quinceañera. That's cute. But, yeah, so, kids can be cruel. Especially young girls. I hate to say that, but, I mean, that is a very, very true fact. Young girls can be extremely mean to each other. It's kind of scary, actually. Yeah. Anyways. So the idea of the extent and degree to which Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon are bullies, let's call it what it is, to Apple Bloom. That's... Yeah. No. Yeah, I've seen that in real life. Both personally and when I was older. Yeah, no, that's not cool. And I don't have anything else to add to that. It's just not cool because harassment is rarely cool. So, naturally, she decides, okay, I've got to work harder than ever in order to become an Apple person. So, first, Dr. Hooves shows up. Did you notice that? I don't think he'll even get named until, like, season 3 or 4, but he shows up. So that's cute. One thing I wonder, though, later on we find out that Forceful Apple Chef, yeah, a different voice actor, too. Although a lot of the male voice actors early on are different than the male voice actors later on. Except for Spike, who is voiced by a woman. Because, of course, he is. That's very common in cartoons, actually. But, so later on, we will actually see a cutie marketing happening. A cutie markiation? I don't know what to call that. Cutie mark thing happen. We will literally see it happen on camera. To my knowledge, we only see it the one time. Every other time it happens off camera. I only mentioned that because A, it makes the moment more special, so it's the first time we've seen it. But second of all, it's actually kind of a very obvious thing. There's no missing that. There's no skipping it. It's just... And it's literally magical. Literal magic happens, which again goes back to my point that it's part of the, your place within harmony, blah, 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 blah thing. But anywho, I only point that out because several times, it's always Apple Bloom or one of the kids. They're like, oh, I totally got my cutie mark, because they don't know that it goes boing. And so they're like, oh, it totally just happened. I didn't even notice, because they don't know that it doesn't work that way. It's funny because I'm almost positive this is continuity that was not intended this way. It just kind of lines up naturally there. Funny how that works out. Anyways, so she tries really hard to become an apple seller. And then something happens which I've never fully understood. I do have a theory this time around. So Bon Bon is there, and Apple Bloom tries to basically con Bon Bon into oh god, I know, Shiko, that'd be horrible. On the other hand, if you got puberty over with just like that, I think I'd prefer that over the just long slog through puberty, right? I mean, imagine just walking through school. All right, I'm ready to go home and get a job with a drill. In the middle of a class presentation, hey, I'll be talking about... I am now ready. So, Bon Bon, of course, doesn't have any of it. One of her, 5, I think, different voice actresses she loved. I think they standardize some of the more background characters much later on in the show. Depends on the country, Lord Harrimont, and the product. But generally speaking, no. Now, if you take a bite out of an apple, then yeah, you can legally enforce you just bought that. Congratulations. If you take a bite out of an apple in a grocery store, they can legally hold you responsible for buying that apple. And if you don't have the money for it, they can call the cops on you and hold you there under citizen's arrest. So, anywho, getting back to Bon Bon. So, Apple Bloom tries the thing on Bon Bon. And, what has always weirded me out is Bon Bon's like, hey, and Applejack, in her haste to apologize, gives her apples, to which Bon Bon looks disgruntled, like, that's not enough of an apology. And so then Applejack gives her more apples, and then more apples. I've never fully understood that scene. In fact, I don't think I still do. The best explanation I could come up with here is that Bon Bon was basically either conning them back, as people in chat are saying right now, or didn't actually want the apples and was looking aggravated because she didn't want the apples. And she finally is just like, all right, fine, you gave me 3 bushels of apples. I'm going to leave. Leave me alone. I don't know, it's just a weirdly constructed scene. That's never really worked for me. Anyways, sorry, moving on. So, nice little note here, and I do kind of like this in its own way. You'll notice that the issue, as funny as this may sound, the issue that's really bothering Apple Bloom, the thing that's really getting to her, is not the fact that she doesn't have a cutie mark. You noticed that, right? Because that's very appropriate. It could be Savacom. No, the issue is the ostracization. The issue is I'm different. The issue is I don't want to be the one to stand out as the one without it. The issue is the fact that she, as the brats who are constantly poking fun at her for it. It could have been basically anything. She could have had a bad hair day, and it would have had the same relative impact. I know that sounds mild, but at the same time, it's true, isn't it? Like if she had a really bad mane day, and the party was today, and she spent the whole episode running around trying to fix her mane, it would still have the same overall approach. Now, I do not mistake me for belittling it. I'm sure most people in chat, and myself as well, understand exactly what it feels like to feel like you're not part of the crowd. To feel like you're ostracized. To feel like there's something wrong with you. After all, we like My Little Pony. And according to the internet, that's just wrong, right? Right? So yeah, I actually am completely with her on that. She doesn't want to be the one over there with everyone mocking her or pointing fun at her. That kind of internal, for lack of a better word, pain sucks. So, I'm with it. Then, the one and only time I really laughed in the whole episode happened. You got a bit of a dark cloud there. I have to admit. I find myself wondering if that literally happened, like if she just happened to have a dark cloud, or if Rainbow Dash brought over a dark cloud to make the joke. Because both work. I mean, either there's literally a dark cloud that manifested over Apple Bloom, or Rainbow Dash was like, here, let's try and cheer up. All right, let me get rid of that for you. So interesting idea comes up here. I agree, by the way, Baron. I like the latter idea too, Act. Rainbow Dash says you can game the system. Now, this is an interesting concept because this kind of runs contrary to the episode's point that you need to just let it happen in its own time and blah, 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 because it's a puberty analogy. But actually, hang on. If you think about it, you can game the system. I know that sounds kind of contrary to the overall message of both this and the Cutie Mark Crusaders going forward, but you really can. Hear me out. Hear me out. I'm going to use this as an analogy for something that isn't puberty, okay? But I think it actually works as a better analogy for how Cutie Marks will be presented going forward, okay? So the original intent was clearly puberty, duh. But I think going forward, it's more about your career. Not your job, but your career, your life work path, the position you have in society going forward, right? You know, you are a doctor, you are a accountant, you are an analyst, you're a YouTuber, right? I think that's a better analogy for how Cutie Marks are presented in the future. And I want to kind of explain part of that. One of the biggest things, this is pure opinion and based a lot on my own personal experience, but it is my opinion that in real life, one of the bigger problems here in the United States is that people, that is to say kids, are not properly encouraged and backed in order to figure out what works for them and what they are good at. So there's a unique combination of something you're good at and something you're really interested in, something you have a genuine passion for, that you want to throw yourself into and then turn it into a career, right? Now, what that is for any given person, who knows? Maybe you have multiple things that fit that for you. But unless you have the resources to try out and people showing interest in you to allow you to express yourselves in multiple ways, you might never find that thing. And I also have the personal theory that most people, statistically speaking, never actually find whatever it is that clicks for them, assuming it's one thing or multiple, with regards to a future career path. Now, what the hell does this have to do with My Little Pony? Well, gaming the system in this case is presented as trying multiple things rapid fire. In other words, you have the backing and someone showing interest. I know it's done for visual gags, but for a moment, take a moment and sit back and think about the fact that they have a karate area and a roller derby area, and that they have kites and that they have wing gliding, right? All of these things are, of course, just little hobbies, but at the same time, they are presented as something that they have the infrastructure and backing necessary for people to go and do. This goes back to what I've talked before about the fact that this is an idyllic society. This is basically a form of a paradise. That people do not have to worry about, oh, well, I'll have to get a job at X because I don't have any other prospects. Because I have nothing else I can try. Yeah, she didn't have to pay gabrillions of dollars and go into debt in order to try out all these things. No, it was just, here, let's go try this out. In short, she's not so much gaming the system as she is trying multiple things. The intent is to game the system, but the actuality is expressing a multitude of interests in actually being able to reach out and try them, and finding out that those are not her thing. It may sound contradictory, but cutting things off of the list of possibilities is still progress. And it helps to inform some of where the Cutie Mark Crusaders will be doing going forward. And again, we'll be talking about that in the future. I also have a note here. It is possible to game this. So getting fully in universe here, it is possible to game the system. It just doesn't mean it's a guarantee of success. You just try multiple things until you do manage to hit on something that really does hit for you. And to be completely blunt, small spoilers, the Cutie Mark Crusaders really do try a lot of things until they finally do hit on something that works for them. The system they were using worked, if you think about it. Anywho. What do you mean, Raskar? Or do we just disagree on that, which is fine? Let's save that for the future. We'll get that in the future, because that's like 4 seasons off or something. That is way in the future. I did notice that most of the stuff that Rainbow Dash was making her try had to do with agility sports or just plain out flying, which makes sense for Rainbow Dash, but doesn't really help Apple Bloom all that much. Sorry, Niscosta. I apologize. So, and of course I have my note here. They have a lot of hobby activities around here, don't they? So then she's like, I'm gonna go get my Cutie Mark in cupcake eating. Okay. Real talk for a second. No. Going back to my career analogy, there's no cupcake eating career. I'm sorry, there isn't. It doesn't work that way. I don't even have the words to properly explain how much that's a no. So we're just gonna go ahead and lay that out there. No. Now, food critic could work. We do know food critics exist in this setting. We will actually meet a few in the future. But eating cupcakes? See, the thing is, the way she phrases that is that she's like, oh man, I love eating cupcakes. See, here's the thing. I'm only pointing this out. I'm not mocking, don't mistake me. This is just Apple Bloom, who is desperately latching on to anything at this point. And this is Pinkie Pie trying to cheer someone up, without being able to actually fix the problem. Which, if you're paying attention, is the same thing she did last episode, which is going to be a recurring thing for her. I can't actually make your problem better, so I'll try to make you feel better. Pretty simple. It's funny, though, because Pinkie Pie arguably makes things worse pretty much across the board. I agree, Sean. Ponyville would actually be a great place to try out a lot of things to figure out, where you want to go going forward. But anyways, although the fact that they have one teacher, I know Savicon pointed that earlier, that's just... Anyways, so... Then Pinkie Pie has a song, which apparently Savicom really likes this song. Would you like to explain why you really like that song? Like, I'm no judgment. No judgment. We all like different things. I'm with it, I guess. Moving on. Oh, speaking of which, so Raskor mentioned something in chat a bit ago. I want my Cutie Mark now! The whole episode obviously gets across the idea that she really wants her Cutie Mark. But I think the single best actual element of showcasing how much she wants her Cutie Mark is when she sees a completely white splotch on her flank and just starts seeing whatever she wants to see in it. The episode literally shows us just, here's a bunch of cupcakes, or here's a measuring spoon. It doesn't look anything like any of those things. It's a blank white splotch. Yeah, it's the clouds in the sky, yeah, and of course it's the whole Rorschach test, right? She sees what she wants to see. She's so insistent, like, oh, that's got to be anything, right? Yeah, no, it's just white flour, Apple Bloom. It's just white flour. Chill out. Chillax a little bit. So then they try to use... Now, this is actually a good thing, and an aspect of good storytelling, believe it or not. They bring in Twilight, who actually goes, and she says, please use your magic to give me a Cutie Mark. Now, obviously, puberty analogy, career analogy, but from an in-universe perspective, you have to explain why can't magic work here. Now, given what we know in the future, it makes perfect sense that magic would not work, because you can't... Again, going back to the whole idea, you can't force yourself to be in a specific slot that fits with the rest of everything. You have to be who you are, right? But it's good that they actually physically show that on camera. Hang on. No. 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 Nope. And that makes sense. Because it shouldn't work that way. And I do like the fact that they showcased that. And again, of course, it all gets back to the core point of the episode, which is you can't, you can't rush it, right? But I'll get to that in a second. There's also a perfect metaphor. I like that too, Shikor. You're right. Shikor says Twilight, who looks exhausted by the end of it, spent the effort to show Appledrum the truth, to actively demonstrate. This is something I do all the time with regards to my niece. I don't just say no. I don't insist that she takes my word for it. I always make a point of either showing or explaining why. Now, that's just me, but it's something I believe very strongly on. There should always be a why, an explanation, right? Well, only temporarily, Sean, although I don't want to spoil for the future. Anywho. So then, probably one of the best metaphors happens in the episode, where Applebloom could have just walked out of the thing. If she had just been like, all right, whatever, and just left, Cutie Mark Corner, or not, I can't think of the building she's in. I can't think of the name of it all of a sudden. But if she just left and wasn't wigged out about it and constantly trying to hide, she would have gotten away scot-free and none of this would have been an issue. Instead, she wrings herself into knots worrying about it. Yeah, the bakery. There's a name for it. They name it. They have, or Sugar Cube Corner, thank you. If she had just walked out of Sugar Cube Corner, that would have been the end of it. Instead, she makes a big fuss about it, and that's what causes her to get caught, and then everything to go south. Now, that's not actually the metaphor, or the analogy, or however you want to say that. The actual metaphor is, well, if she had decided to leave, if she had decided to bail on the party, she never would have met the other two. And I got to give them credit for that. That's bloody subtle. See, here's the thing. You can interpret this a couple of different ways. So just here's my interpretation. Because she was who she is, she met her very good friends and would end up, falling into a position where she would fit with them and they in everything going forward. If she was anyone other than who she was, wouldn't have happened. I like that. I have to admit, I like that. As I've said before, I actually do like the Cutie Mark Crusaders. It's not... some of their episodes get old. I'm not going to lie about that. I talked about that before, because they tend to repeat the same point over and over and over. But I do like the Cutie Mark Crusaders overall. And that's true. That's another good point. Shikor says if she didn't go through the unpleasant beginning of the party, she wouldn't have met the friends who bring her great joy in the future. That is actually a good life lesson, to be completely blunt. You gotta put up with crap to get the good. That is life. That is all of life, right there. Even in the idyllic My Little Pony, Pony Valeria, you still gotta put up with crap to get the good. So... meanwhile, Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara are wearing outfits that literally hide their cutie marks. That's cute. That's true. Clicks do form very naturally from that. There's actually a nice little tidbit. Okay, so I've talked many times about how much I believe this show has been backloaded in terms of its storytelling. Them taking little tidbits and saying, oh, they reacted this way in that episode. Let's make something big out of that, right? I actually have another example of that, just in case I haven't got my point across yet. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine, there's an episode, I don't remember the episode, please forgive me, but it's an episode where Kira gets together with some romantic partner. It's one of the 15 guys she gets together with over the course of the show. And in the script, there's nothing written there. Odo's just like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm here for you. However, the director and the actor being René Bergenois, portrayed it completely differently. The lines were unchanged from the script, and there was no intention in the script. However, because of the fact that Odo's reaction was, oh. Because that was Odo's reaction, The writers then looked at that and said, oh, of course Odo's in love with her, and then wrote the Odo and Kira subplot as a direct consequence of something that the actor and director put into the episode. Wasn't supposed to be there. Wasn't intended by the writers. That is a perfect example of backloaded storytelling. So, to continue with that and make it relevant to My Little Pony, if you get the chance, I want you to do yourself a favor and rewatch the scene where Apple Bloom is trying to talk her way around Diamond Tiara. And she says, "Oh my God, being outshined at your own quinceanera, could you imagine?" And Diamond Tiara reacts, and credit to the actress, there's just this moment of palpable fear, which she immediately swallows and goes right back to her domineering presence. But that little peak of that is going to be her character going forward. And I say going forward, it's actually not going to come up for like 3 seasons, but that is going to come back around. And I like to think that that was the moment that they looked to and said, you know what? Because she will get basically retroactive backstory going forward that really does help to flesh her out as a character. It's just going to take a while to get there. So, we don't see much of them, but this is also when Scootaloo or Sweetie Belle are introduced, right? Well, no, actually. Check this out. So, give me one moment, but I'm going to show you something. I know I've been talking many times about the nature of backloaded storytelling. In fact, I just gave a whole speech about it. Backloaded storytelling, it's a thing. Woo! Now, I'm just going to show you a picture, because if I show you any more, then, I'll be screwed forever and copywronged into oblivion. Why is it not... I'm sorry, hang on one second. Come on. There we go. Okay. So, you see this shot? This is very crude, but that's just because I'm just grabbing it really quick here. You see this shot? This is from the first episode. This is Season 1, Episode 1, first part of Friendship is Magic. Do you see who's with her in there? Now, I decided to do a little digging on this. Apparently, this is one of those things that was kind of, but also not really planned. I've also heard varying accounts on this, so I can't actually speak to the specifics of it. But the long and the short of it is, from what I understand, they had to draw 2 other, smaller ponies here in order to showcase them in this scene, so they did. And then, much later on, they came up with the characters of Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle. And that's how they ended up meeting. And they made a deliberate reference to that in this episode, because if you're paying attention, they're hiding under the table again when they come out and meet Apple Bloom. I've heard a couple of differing accounts in that. I don't know which is true. I just thought I'd point it out because it's interesting one way or the other. It might be like the Futurama thing. They didn't intend that, but then they went back and made it so future showings of the episode had it in it. That could be a thing. I don't know. Either way, so the Cutie Mark III, the Cutastically Fantastics, the Cutie Mark Crusaders are finally introduced properly into the show. And you'll notice that rule of 3 thing comes in yet again. So, Kong, and, duh, right? Although what's interesting is that Scootaloo, even early on, there's kind of the impression that Scootaloo isn't a full-on Pegasus. We'll see how that is going forward. I don't think that was intended originally either. I think that's just something they decided to, make in the future. But either way, Cutie Mark Crusaders are introduced. Woo! And we now have the second protagonists of the show. Because let's be honest, they get a lot of screen time and a lot of episodes devoted to them in the future. In fact, I actually found out another thing. This is recent news to me. Apparently there was supposed to be a spin-off show. The high school thing? There was supposed to actually be a spin-off show just devoted to the Cutie Mark Crusaders that never took off. So a lot of the ideas and work that had been done for that were then baked into the episodes. If you ever wonder why they're so freaking dominant, it's because of that. Either way, a decent episode, good episode. I've already talked about the themes. I already talked about the message. I asked you guys to remind me to remember something to talk about, and I have since forgotten it. Do you guys remember what that was about? I know I asked you to remind me. It was something about complexity. Oh, no, I already did talk about it. It's the nature of the fact that Apple Bloom being herself is what deliberately led to her meeting the other two. That's what I was gonna. So complexity, right? It's a complex issue, rather than just I must do whatever. My take on that. Either way, reasonably good episode. Looking at my notes here, we didn't have a wah-wah. And we didn't have Ponyville damaged. But what we did have is the end of the episode.